Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie and today we are talking about my favorite books of all time. Yes, I have actually never made this video, and that is because I was saving it for a special moment, a big moment, and I feel like now is the time because I did cross 500 subscribers. So thank you so much for joining me on this channel. I'm having such a blast talking about books and making friends in the community, and it's just been amazing. So if you are subscribed, thank you so much. It's a joy to have everyone here. And in celebration of reaching that milestone, I thought it is finally time to tell you about my favorite books of all time. Of course, several of them have been mentioned in passing on this channel. It's kind of a blink and you'll miss it kind of situation, but it's time to make a full video about it. And if you notice, I am not in my usual filming space, and that is because actually in my usual filming space with the office and all those bookshelves behind me, none of those are my favorite books. I actually have a separate shelf out in my living room that is dedicated completely to my favorite books. I guess kind of with the idea that if someone comes over to my house, they take a look at my bookshelves and you'll see what is on there and I can talk to them about those. So that's why I do actually have them separated out. This shelf is all my physical TBR, so we are not talking about that today. This is my favorite shelf, and these are what we're going to be talking about today. Now, if you know me, you know that it is very hard for me to get a 5-star book, let alone something worthy of being added to my favorite shelf. It is a very, very, very high bar to clear. So when I tell you that these books are amazing, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. These books stunned me. Does not necessarily mean they're going to be for everyone, but these ones are the books that touched my soul in such a way that I just can never stop thinking about them. They are the gem that I'm always after when I'm reading, and they are the things that keep me coming back. We've got quite the stack, so let's get into it. First up, we have Atonement by Ian McEwan. Wow, I feel like I know a lot of people know the movie with Keira Knightley and James McAvoy. I do also really enjoy the movie, but the book, wow. I mean, this is a masterpiece. Okay, and I feel like all of these books I feel like are masterpieces, so maybe I'm gonna have to find a better word. But for me, this is really like the height of narrative, structural, voice, all the form things that I love about writing. I mean, this is just a masterclass in the actual, physical art of writing a book. And oh my gosh, it is stunning. Again, probably won't be for everyone. I actually read this with my book club, and it was certainly not a hit across the board because Ian McEwan, he does have a very pretentious writing style, especially in like the first section of this book. He's actually writing from a child's point of view, and some people do not like that, but I loved it. So what is this book about? This book is set in the kind of onset of World War II in England, and it starts with our protagonist, Brandy, who is a young child, and she's living in this big manor house with her family when she witnesses something that she believes she witnesses a crime, essentially. And we know as adults reading this that what we're witnessing is not exactly what she assumes it is, but the fact that she witnesses this, she tells it to other people, and it kind of kicks off this long chain of events because she essentially misunderstood what she was looking at. I'm speaking in really vague terms here because I don't want to spoil anything, but it's essentially about the consequences of that situation, and it is across a couple decades after this event. And this book is told in 3 distinct sections, and each of the sections feel completely different but then come together in the most just surprising way. I loved every minute of this, though there was a section in the middle that is pretty disturbing to read. And in fact, I actually have not reread this book since reading it for the first time because of that middle section. I guess I could just choose not to read that section, but I mean, come on, why would you do that? But anyway, I adore this book. I adore this book. It is fantastic. It's moving. It's really, really clever. And I love this book. But again, Ian McEwan has a very pretentious writing style that if you are not into that, I could see there being an issue, but if you are curious at all about this, I mean, pick it up. It is a modern classic for a reason. It is fantastic. Next up, we have another historical fiction that is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is another World War II set story, but in, working with different pieces of it. This follows a couple characters. One of them is a young German boy who is recruited into Hitler's army, and the other is a young Jewish girl who is living in Paris. I believe she's Jewish. I will be honest, I have not read this book in a very long time, but it was fantastic for the second that I read it. I do need to reread this. What I remember very distinctly about this is that the writing is stunning. It is absolutely gorgeous. Like the prose, the sentences in here are just gonna knock you off your feet. They are so beautiful. The story, very, very powerful, very moving as well. I've actually since read Anthony Doerr's next book, which is Cloud Cuckoo Land, and this one was also fantastic. It's a grand, sweeping epic. I really enjoyed this one as well. This one is a much more straightforward story than that one. This is a semi, classic World War II tale with all of the trappings in it. But I did find that just for me, Anthony Doerr's writing is really what pulls me in. I think he is a fantastic writer and kind of, I think, one of the best working authors of our current modern day. Next up, we have a light horror book that is The September House by Carissa Orlando. This book is pretty recent, actually. This is from 2023, and I picked this book up originally from the library, kind of on a whim. I didn't expect much, and wow, I was just so blown away by the power that this book had over me. This is, like I said, it's a light horror. I've heard this described as cozy horror. I don't know, I'd have to unpack what that even means, but this is about a woman who is in this grand, beautiful house. She adores this house, and it means the world to her, but the house is haunted. And what's really fun about this is that the ghosts, or the things that are haunting the house, our protagonist is well aware of them. She's been living with them for ages, and she doesn't have any issues with the house at all. It does seem to get more haunted as the months creep closer to September, with the max of the hauntings happening in September. And this story really kicks off when her husband goes missing, and this woman's older, adult daughter comes back, and her daughter has no idea about the hauntings going on in the house. It's the month of September, so the mother has to essentially keep her daughter from finding out what is going on with the hauntings of the house, while also they're working together to figure out what happened to her husband. To me, this was just so much more than a fun, campy horror story. It really goes into some interesting topics. I almost don't even want to say too much, because I really think that you should just go into this completely blind and just kind of let the story happen to you. But it is much deeper than just a campy horror story, and I think about it all the time. I really want to reread this. I recommend this to pretty much anyone who even slightly likes horror, even a little bit, or who is just looking for a really good haunted house story. Next up, we have Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. Ooh, wow. This book, I read it in 2022, I believe, and it was a 2021 release, so another fairly recent one. This was the first Sally Rooney that I read, and I picked this up completely on a whim. I saw it on the shelf at my library, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll try it. And wow, I cannot believe the emotional impact this book left on me. I do think a large part of it had to do with my age at the time, where I was in life. I was experiencing a lot of the same things that these characters are experiencing, and I think for that reason, it hit really hard for me. But also, Sally Rooney's prose and her discussions about society at large and what's going on in the world, and how what her characters feel on a deeply personal level is also reflected back to them in society. I found all of that discussion really fantastic. I was just so amazed with what Sally Rooney was able to create here. And in fact, there is the climactic scene that happens towards the end of the book. And it's really, it's really simple. It's nothing crazy that happens. It's literally just a dinner party, and the entire conflict happens strictly through dialogue alone, but it was so powerful. It was had me on the edge of my seat. It was like I was watching an action scene, but it was all done with dialogue, and it was just so fantastic. I think about this book all the time. Again, another one that I'm desperately wanting to reread just to see how I react to it now that I'm a few years older. But wow, I'm just so impressed with this. I have read all of Sally Rooney's other works since reading this, and none of them have hit as hard as this one did, but I have just discovered that I really like Sally Rooney as an author. I love her writing. I love what she has to say about the world. But that being said, I do know that not everyone loved this one. I honestly don't know why, because I found it flawless, but I do know that this one is kind of some of her more divisive work, so just keep that in mind. Next up, we have another horror book that is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. Oh my gosh, this is one of, if not the most scary horror books I have ever read. This freaked me out in the best way though. Again, Ian Reid, just an author that I adore. I have since read all of Ian Reid's works, all of his horror works, I should say. And they're all fantastic. They are all really well done. He has a very distinct style. His writing style is very snappy, short, accessible, and I think that that really works when we're doing horror because it keeps you in the tension. Like the sentences are so short and you're just like trying to read like next one because it's so tense the entire time. And this book is no exception. It is a very tense ride the entire time. This is about a woman who is going to meet her boyfriend's parents for the first time, and they live in this creepy house in the wilderness. And it's a very dark and snowy night, as you can see from the cover. Perfect book to read on a snow day. It will scare the heck out of you for sure. And yeah, it's about just this couple who is kind of working through their relationship whilst other things are going on. Very mind-bending, very trippy, very scary, and I loved it. Again, I do know people who did not love this or just thought it was okay. I don't know if it was just because I was pretty new to the horror genre when I read this, or I would just like to think that Ian Reid did an amazing job because I also really loved his other book, We Spread. Both books really, really phenomenal. So I think Ian Reid is just a really clever author, and he knows how to write scary. Next up, we're going from scary to comforting. That is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I was very late to this book. I think I read this in 2023 and it has been around for a while. Like I think this was written in like 2017, 2016, maybe even earlier. This is a booktube darling. This has been around the block. People have known that this book is amazing, but I was really late to it. But yeah, when I read it, I mean, it's fantastic. It's magical, it's cozy, it's comforting, it's beautifully written and just like such vividly imagined world. It's stunning and I love it and I can't wait to reread it. What is this about? This is about a night circus. It is about a magical circus that comes to town and it is open at midnight and it is filled with beautiful, magical curiosities. This book follows a lot of different characters. We have the people who actually work within the circus. We have people who are coming to watch the circus. We have different people that are connected to the circus in different ways. And at the heart of it is sort of a rivals romance story. There is romance to it, but there's also a lot else going on. It's just this magical world. It really just transports you to this stunning, beautiful, richly imagined world, which is why I loved it so much. I did read it physically, but I have to imagine that this is amazing on audiobook, especially because I know that the audiobook is read by Jim Dale, who did the Harry Potter books, which I just think that that would be amazing. So if I reread this, or when I reread this, I should say, I will probably do it on audio to get that magical immersive experience. Next up, we have Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I mean, you guys probably know about this one. It makes people's favorite list all the time, and for very good reason, because this book is so freaking good, my brain can't even process. My brain can't even process how Ishiguro wrote such a masterpiece. This is another modern classic, and it is, it deserves to be in the canon of literature. It is that freaking good. But the thing is that me and Ishiguro have, had, I won't say a rocky path, but, we are not always aligned. And in similar fashion, I did not get this book at first. I actually read this book as a freshman in college for a college literature course, and I was just, a dumb freshman, and I did not get this book at all. I thought it was very boring and slow paced at first, did not understand the appeal. And really the issue is because of the expectation that I had going into this book. And I think that the people who end up disliking this book, I think it's for the same reasons that I did at first. I can fully admit that I was very, very wrong. And having reread it on a reread, this is it's stunning. It is unbelievably good. But what this book is about is it follows this school, this boarding school full of children, and it follows one of the students there, and she's recounting her time at this boarding school. And it is very obvious very quickly that this boarding school is different. Something's going on here. You don't really know what it is. There are kind of hints and you kind of put it together, but it's very unclear what is going on. There's weird things happening and you don't know why. And this book has just a very unsettling and melancholic tone to it. And you know something's wrong, but you don't really know exactly what's wrong. And you're just following this child as she's telling you about her life. And it is just, it's profound, it's sad, it's moving, it makes you think. It packs all of the emotions in here for sure. Ishiguro, I think one thing that people don't like about him though is that he is very long-winded with his stories. They kind of meander. You kind of don't really know where we're going. You're kind of like, what's happening here? And I think that can be very frustrating for some readers. Like I said, on first read, I did not get this. I didn't get this because I kept being like, oh, when is it going to tell me about the answers? When am I going to figure it out? Like, I expected it to be like a thriller or like, just a very action-heavy book. And that is not what this is. This is a quiet, introspective book dealing with a character who is processing her emotions, processing, honestly, some trauma. And it's not fast-paced. It's not, I wouldn't say like exciting exactly. Like, you are kind of curious. You're trying to, work out what's going on, but that's not really the point of the book. And I think once you let that expectation go, then it's beautiful. And I think I personally love this book because I love stories that are from a child's point of view, or someone who's recounting a time in their childhood and we're seeing it through that child's eyes. That's one of my favorite things, and this is the masterclass of that. So I would say if you don't like slow, I don't know if you're gonna love this, but if you do like character and you do like very complex emotional stories, then you'll love this. Next up, we have Transcendent Kingdom by Yagazi. This is another book that I read fairly recently. I think I might have read this in 2022, I think is when I read this. Fantastic. This is from the author of Homegoing, which I know a lot of people love. I have not read that one yet, and it is on my list, but Yagazi, Transcendent Kingdom, wow, wow, wow. Very, very powerful stuff in here. This follows, I believe they're a Nigerian family. I think they're Nigerian. They are, the mother is a first-generation immigrant like I said, I believe it's Nigeria, but I'm not 100% sure. But the children are growing up in America. And this book follows the daughter of that family. She is older now. She is a scientist. She is working on her PhD, and she's kind of having a moment of crisis. And it's a lot about kind of the discussion of science versus religion. And then interspersed are kind of moments from her childhood, and you get this really kaleidoscopic picture. It kind of comes together like when I was reading this book, I thought of like a quilt, how you have each like little piece and then you put it together and it's this like grand, massive, beautiful thing. Again, just kind of all of the emotions packed into one. It's profound, it's funny at times, it's interesting, it's sad, it's all the things. And Yagazi, again, just stunning prose, beautiful writing, and she just really crafts a fantastic and very engaging narrative here. I thought this was so beautiful. Another one I constantly am thinking about all the time. I desperately need to reread this, but actually I really need to read Homegoing first. And I found this book to be just very, very powerful. All right, we're getting down to the end here. Next up, we have Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. This book I kind of have a very interesting story with. So one day I was in England, I was on my way to Edinburgh, and I didn't have a book to read. I was just about to get on the train to Edinburgh, which from where I was about, I think, like a 4-hour train ride. It was going to be a long time. So I was like, I got time to kill. Need a book. Went into the shop and I just saw this book. This pink cover. I was like, what is that? I want to read it. It is this gorgeous, stunning cover, which the American cover is not as nice, but this one really grabbed my eye, grabbed my attention. I was like, I need to read that. I had no idea what this was. I had no idea who David Mitchell was. I had no idea about anything. I had no idea that this would become one of my favorite books of all time. This book, I'm sure you have heard something about it. It is well known for its very distinctive structure, which I adore. I adore books that do something fun with structure. I adore books that are very meta, and this is all of that. I can't even describe exactly what this is about because it is literally centuries spanning, and that seems kind of unwieldy, but David Mitchell manages it somehow. I mean, this is another modern classic. This is discussed a lot when talking about, great books of the, I don't know when this book was, it's not the 21st century, I don't think, but recent fantastic books, in the recent literary canon. I will try to explain what this is. This is basically following 6 different characters at 6 different points in time and how their lives are kind of interconnected in a way, but mostly it is David Mitchell kind of flexing his writing prowess. He writes in the language of like the 1700s, then to some like futuristic dialogue that he's actually inventing, and pretty much everything in between. And it's just a really interesting, engaging story. You never know what's going to happen next. You never know where he's going to go next. And I love David Mitchell as a writer. I think like his like prose style and his sentences are just so beautiful, so fun. And this really kept me on my toes. I never knew what we were doing. I never knew why we were doing it, but I had the best time. It is definitely something you should read if you like more experimental fiction. And by that, I mean experimenting with the style and format and things like that. I am definitely interested in rereading this relatively soon because it's been a while since I've read it, and I would be very interested to see how it has progressed now that I've read a lot of other kind of metafiction and things like that since then. But this is a modern classic for a reason. It is fantastic. And then finally, we have reached my last little section here, and that is because all of these books, these 3 books, are by the same author. If you ask me who is my favorite author, I think this is easily going to be my answer. That is Emily St. John Mandel. I am literally obsessed with Emily St. John Mandel. I think she is fantastic. I am currently working through reading her entire back catalog, but the book that put her on the map was Station 11, and Station 11 is absolutely one of my favorite books. If people always ask me what's your favorite book, I always say Station 11 because, well, for one, it is actually one of my favorite books, but 2, I think that it is amazing for every type of reader. I love literary fiction. This is definitely that because Emily St. John Mandel is a fantastic writer. Her sentences are beautiful, but they're not over the top. Like David Mitchell, Ian McEwan, Ishiguro, other authors that I just mentioned here, they write really, long, somewhat flowery stuff. That is not Emily St. John Mandel. She is very economic with her writing style. It's not a long drawn out sentence. She really packs a punch with her words. She chooses her words so carefully so that even though she's not saying as much, it's filled with meaning, and I think that that is so brilliant. It also makes it very accessible to a lot of different people. I think even if you haven't, even if you're not a super avid reader, you don't read a ton, I think you can pick this book up and really enjoy it. And another reason is because this is about a pandemic, and it was written before 2020. I remember reading this book in 2017. I was actually like on a plane, I was traveling, and Emily St. John Mandel is fascinated with pandemics. She's fascinated with what happens to the world if we have to shut it down because we are living in such a modern, convenience-oriented, global time. And she's really fascinated with what happens when you have to shut all of that down, which of course makes this a very eerie book to read in, living in a post-2020 world. But when I read it in 2017, it really did stand out to me then as well too. I was on a plane, and she has an entire section that's like talking about how, all the planes were grounded and they never saw a plane in the sky again, like stuff like that. Like it was really powerful in the moment. It's even more powerful now. I have reread this a couple times. I think it is, fantastic. Every time I've read it, it stands up to, my changing reading taste, the test of time. A lot of people have read this book. It's really, really popular, and for good reason. I think a lot of different kind of readers can enjoy this. It's, very exciting. It's a pandemic. There's things going on. This is told during the pandemic. It's also told 20 years after. It's told before. It's really moving around in time and space, which is another thing that Emily St. John Mandel loves to do, and I love that as well. Again, a very kaleidoscopic kind of novel. You're getting images from everywhere, and it's also very philosophical. She loves to kind of muse on our, place in the world, and I absolutely love this book. And then, so after she wrote Station 11, her next two books, which are The Glass Hotel and Sea of Tranquility, they are kind of in this same universe. It's a little bit odd because they're not direct sequels or anything like that. You can actually read them completely standalone. I've seen people online pick up Sea of Tranquility, which was a 2022 release, 2023, I think. I've seen people pick this up because it's sci-fi, and they haven't read anything else by her. So the books are actually not, you don't have to read them in order or anything, but I do think that they should be read in order because they are in this interconnected universe, and you have characters appear from other places, and it's very interesting. And that's why I think she's building this universe, like this internal universe, which is really fun if you're kind of in the know. So that's why I do suggest reading them in order. But they're all about vastly different things, sort of. Station 11, about a pandemic and the aftermath of it. The Glass Hotel kind of takes then a big, swift turn. This is about the big business of the early 2000s, which feels, very different from Station 11. But this is actually about a young woman who gets entangled with this big businessman, and he's actually running this big, elaborate financial con, and she gets wrapped up in it. And it's about their relationship. It's about this girl who's pulled from basically nothing and then, dropped into this world of opulence. It's about, consumerism of the 2000s. It's about all sorts of things, all done in Emily St. John Mandel's beautiful, stunning prose. I think this is the one that's going to be the hardest for people to connect to, unless you have that interest in, the lifestyles of the rich and famous type of thing. I personally really enjoyed this, again, because I love her writing style, but also because I am very, very, very interested in big financial cons. I think that's very fascinating stuff, but I do understand that this is very lit fic focused, and some people are not so much about that, but I, of course, really love this one as well. And then lastly, we have Sea of Tranquility, which returns to the pandemic theme, but this time it was written post-2020. And what's really interesting about this one is this one becomes kind of a piece of autofiction. Yes, it is sci-fi, because this one is actually taking place many, many, many years in the future. It's also using time in a really weird way. And what's really fascinating about this one is that it is heavily, it's not just inspired by, but it's actually an homage to Cloud Atlas. So my worlds are colliding here. You can believe that when I started reading this book and realized what was going on, I was like, oh my God, it's Cloud Atlas. It's like Cloud Atlas. A lot of people don't know that about this book, but yeah, the structure is directly ripped from Cloud Atlas, so obvious an homage, and it's doing the same thing that Cloud Atlas is doing, except in a much shorter format. I mean, look at the difference. Much more concise way. This one's also very trippy for that reason, very weird, moving a lot around in space. But I say it's autofiction because this is actually following an author who wrote a book about a pandemic, and it got to be very, very popular. And she's talking about how, she's written a bunch of other books, which Emily St. John Mandel had. She's written like 4 other books before this. But this is the one that really, people were drawn to, and they always want to talk about that book, and she just becomes obsessed with pandemics. So all that is to say is that, to be honest, I have seen people read this book without reading anything else, and I kind of just don't even understand. It's like you're not even reading the same book if you don't know the lore of Emily St. John Mandel's world. So this one is very interesting to me. I think it's fun if you're in the know. I think if you're not in the know, I think you could still enjoy this. I still have seen people enjoy this without reading her other stuff, but I recommend reading them together because, you know, that it works out. I mean, you could at least just read these two, but like I said, there are characters that are pulled and it makes sense if you know them and things like that. So that is the world of Emily St. John Mandel, and I absolutely love it. She is my favorite author. Okay, wow, those are all of the books on this list. That took a long time, honestly longer than I thought it was going to take, but I'm not mad about it because I just had to gush about these books, my favorite books of all time. Please let me know if you have read any of these books or if you are going to pick one of them or multiple up because of my review. And again, thank you so much for 500 subscribers, actually a little bit more than 500, so thank you so much. I really am just so grateful for everyone who has decided to be here with me on this fun little booktube adventure. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, week, month, year, and I will see you back here next time. Thanks so much. Bye.